Playoff seeding is officially set, and we know the 4 potential teams the Boston Celtics could face. However, this is going to be a tougher series than people think, and the Celtics have to make a big statement if they really want to go all the way. We'll be looking at some potential downfalls for the Boston Celtics, plus some good matchups as well. There's going to be a lot of positives, a lot of negatives coming up on this episode of Celtics Digest, so stick around. But guys, if you're excited for the Boston Celtics playoffs, you're excited for this video, leave us a like, push us in the algorithm. You know a lot of other Celtics fans will want to find us. So hey, if you enjoy this stuff, you're excited, leave a thumbs up for the Celtics in the playoffs. Bruce, Isaac, we're just going to get straight into this, and we're going to start with some of the Celtics potential matchups. Now, here's the playoff bracket. Of course, Boston finishing the season 64-18. What a season it was, ending on a high note. Payton Pritchard, amazing. 82-game season. Anyway, he's not the subject of this video, though I'm sure he'll come up. But what we do know for sure now is the potential matchups for the Celtics, as it's going to be the Sixers, Heat, Bulls, and Hawks, highlighting the 7 through 10 seed in the play-in. Guys, just before we get into the potential matchups, I wanted to hear your thoughts about how the season ended and how the Celtics are primed, especially with that nice Mike Gorman celebration in that last game of the season, how they're primed to go into this first round of the playoffs on an incredible hot streak.
We saw the last 2 games, Josh, that they have absolutely balled out without their starters. Guys like Payton Pritchard had career highs in back-to-back games. Neemias Queta also had a career high, and Svi Mykhailiuk tied his career high. 3 career highs to go out for Mike Gorman is absolutely fantastic. They came out, they balled out on their home court, only losing to 1 Eastern Conference opponent, and that was the New York Knicks just this week when they were playing very lackadaisical. I am no way scared if the series goes to Game 7 in Boston.
For sure.
And likewise, Bruce, I couldn't agree more. When you have your bench players getting your career high and playing in the role and getting straight to it and supporting your starters, it's actually a lethal objective to go into the playoffs that way with a strong bench.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? And of course, that being one of the things that some analysts and maybe even ourselves were talking about regarding this Celtics lineup at the start of the season. Will that depth hold up? Well, hey, getting these guys rolling at the right time, having these games where you can afford to play them a lot of minutes is going to be huge. But guys, let's just get straight into the matchups. That's what everyone's excited about, right? We want to talk about these things and how the Celtics will match up, and what better team to start with than the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, the Philadelphia 76ers, well, we know there's an interesting thing about them, and that is Joel Embiid. Now, while he didn't play in the season finale versus the Nets, all likelihood he's going to be ready for the play-in, and he's going to be ready to go in the first round. But the Philadelphia 76ers, like most teams in the NBA, did not fare very well against the Boston Celtics, as they went 1-3, most games being held below 45% shooting. Some pretty big stinkers from the Sixers there. Guys, with Joel Embiid, like, that is kind of the big worry for the Celtics. I know Kristaps Porzingis has transformed this offense, and he'll be able to take Embiid out of the paint a bit more if that is the matchup the Sixers decide to go with, which it probably will be. Are you guys afraid of Joel Embiid at all? Because, I mean, having a former MVP be your first round opponent is definitely a little intimidating.
I think that the Celtics should not be that worried about the Philadelphia 76ers, in my opinion. Joel Embiid is coming off this injury, like you mentioned. He did not go today. Should be ready to go for the playoffs, but who's to say that he's going to be fully 100% to go in the playoffs? And like you mentioned with the regular season as well, the Boston Celtics, that first loss to the Philadelphia 76ers is when they took over the first spot in the Eastern Conference. Then when the Celtics beat them again in November, they had not lost that first spot, and it was all starting with that big win versus Philadelphia. And as we all know, and Joel Embiid has said, the Celtics versus Sixers isn't a rivalry because they always kick them in the butts. So therefore, I'm not scared.
What about you, Isaac?
And that's, in that sense, you're right. Embiid's coming off an injury, so we don't know what type of Embiid we're going to get. Now, I'm anticipating if he was fully healthy, I would be scared as the Celtics just a little bit, or at least concerned. But he's been coming off an injury. He's been out the last couple of days. Let's see what we got in game 1.
Like, the Sixers fans are all hyped. They're convinced that the Sixers are going to roll through this plan and roll through, well, potentially roll through the first round opponent. Now, again, like we said, it's not a rivalry, right? The Celtics are amazing. They went 64-18 for a reason. But when you're looking at this first round series, this is where you really want to make your mark. And being able to stomp a team out in the first round is going to do wonders for your confidence going forward. And it's what the Celtics should do. They have stomped basically every team this season, being above 500 against almost every single one of them. Actually, one of the teams they didn't go 500 against is coming up a bit later, so stick around for that. But I think, too, just your quick thoughts before we move on to another team. If they were to get matched up with the Sixers, and if all things worked out that way, stomping that team would do more good for this Celtics team than I think anything else. Like, stomping Embiid and the Sixers in a sweep or a 4-1 series, if that were to happen, it would be so key for this Boston team.
I think so as well. I think it would be very similar to how when they beat the Brooklyn Nets in that 4-game sweep just 2 years ago when they went on their finals run. A lot of people were picking Kevin Durant and that team to come out in that series because the Boston's slumping, and the Celtics actually came out and prepared and beat them in a sweep. So I think it would be a little bit of a bounce back. I think a lot of people are also speculating that Celtics are going to be a little shaky in the first round. So it's a matchup versus the Sixers or versus the Heat. A lot of analysts are going to be kind of not favoring, but being very hyped up on the upset. So I think the Celtics going out there and getting a dominating stance is what they need to, kind of show to the NBA that they're not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't agree more with that, Bruce. I mean, you want to get it something mentally stimulating going into another playoff series and through the playoffs. It's building that momentum, going through mental wins like that, because it is a whole nother season in the playoffs. So getting a sweep would be a big key for them to actually get some momentum and make a run to the finals.
It'd be amazing, right? Just watching Joel Embiid be upset again. Oh. Couldn't possibly be better. But hey, we can't spend the whole video talking about the Sixers as much as maybe we'd love to. We got to talk about some of these other potential matchups, guys. This playoff bracket is pretty wild. And we're going to move on to the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics have some demons with the Miami Heat. This is a team that has always, well, maybe not always, but has frequently over the past number of years done very well against Boston, and a team that no matter what their regular season looks like, ends up being scary in the playoffs. But again, we might as well go over the regular season numbers, and we'll talk a bit about the last playoff series, I'm sure, a bit too. But Boston pretty handily defeated the Heat this season, the Heat going 0-3, as you can see here. Now, 2 of those losses were fairly close, but that one first loss in October, or back in October, when Miami shot 48.5% from 3 against Boston, that was like very reminiscent of that playoff series where Miami just went nuclear. Martin going crazy from 3. I'm sure we all remember. Miami did that, and Boston still came out on top in that game. And I think, again, Bam Adebayo is going to be much less of an impact defender if he has to stay on Kristaps Porzingis or Al Horford or even Xavier Tillman, whoever he's on. I think being able to take Bam maybe out of the game a bit more, and these Celtics, like their depth scoring now, just having so many like number one options that they can go to depending on the matchup. I think this is just going to kill Miami. I think Miami, as much as you can never count them out in a playoff series, I feel like I'm way less scared than I would have been in the past 2 or 3 years.
I agree with you that 1,000%, Josh. I think that adding Kristaps Porzingis is that key X factor to stopping Bam Adebayo, helping him on the defensive side, and takes that aspect away. He's been able to dominate Bam Adebayo in those key matchups, and the Heat have lost guys. Caleb Martin, he's still on the squad, but hasn't had that great of a year this year. They lost their guy in Gabe Vincent, who was a key shooter for them in score. Yes, they got Patty Mills. Yes, they got Delon Wright. In my opinion, are they the scariest out of the 4? For sure. And if they match up in the first round, could Patty Mills or Delon Wright have a game where they go off versus the Boston Celtics? I could see it. But in my honest opinion, like you said, they don't have, I think, those many dog characteristic guys. I don't think they have those hard-nosed guys on the defensive side that are going to be able to push them through this year compared to the year that they did in years past.
And I agree with you too. And I don't want to sound like a piggyback, but although this is not the same Miami team from last year, but I will say this, the difference between this Miami team than last year is they're slightly younger with Terry Rozier. And then obviously Patty Mills is on the older end, but he's a little more mature being with that championship experience than DeLon Wright. So this team is not the same team as last year that was just gritty with shooters that could just get hot, but they may have a different defensive strategy going 3 times. It's hard to beat teams over and over again, but I feel like the Celtics are going to scout this game better. They know the mental implications from last year, what happened of their breakdown, losing to Miami. So I feel like it's going to come down to more of a revenge series.
Yeah, I'm going to call this the Kristaps Porzingis series preemptively. Like, if this is to happen, I think we're going to look back on this series where Boston beats Miami in the first round, and we'll look and say Kristaps was the difference maker there. That Kristaps Bam matchup, I'm just going to call that right now. I like we said, I think that while Miami, you can never count them out. It is scary no matter what. Spo is one of the best coaches, maybe the best coach in the NBA at game planning for a team when you have to go up against them in a 7-game series. But with all that said, I still think Boston fares very, very well. But hey, we got to move on because those are the two tougher teams, I think. But these are the 2 teams that we would just love to see. And you never know, in these play-in series, these upsets can come pretty easily. And I want to talk a bit about the Chicago Bulls. And I know, Bruce, you made this very clear that this is the team that you would love to face in the first round. Isaac, I think we might end up having to agree, though. I might go for... I'm a sucker to see the Celtics stomp Embiid, even if it's a bit of a harder series. But looking at this matchup this year, the Bulls went 0-3 against the Celtics. The Bulls got smoked every single game. Like, none of these games were close. The Bulls shot 57% that game just a couple weeks ago, and they still lost by 11 to the Boston Celtics. To me, this Chicago Bulls team is reeling. Of course, Lonzo Ball, a really unfortunate situation for him. Of course, I wish him well. I'd love to see him healthy again, but this Bulls team just isn't that great. I mean, DeMar DeRozan is not going to be able to carry them to another playoff series win. Kobe White's improved, sure, but like, I just don't see a world where the Bulls honestly even get to a first round series with the Celtics, but I don't see any world where the Celtics don't handle them with ease.
I couldn't agree more. Like you mentioned, this is the team that I want the Celtics to play. They are a little bit of a good clutch fourth quarter team, which could barehand the Boston Celtics late in games. But in my honest opinion, I think they have the weakest roster out of all these players, top to bottom, with key stars. They already lost Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan's a great superstar player, but is he going to be able to put this team on his back with Kobe White, with Nikola Vucevic, with all these guys? No, he is not. Maybe they'll get one game versus the Boston Celtics at home, but that's the biggest stretch I could see. And I think after, the two teams that we just talked about, and the next team we'll talk about where they've had some recent bad stretches against them, I think the Bulls, since they've had regular season dominance, I think they could show some postseason dominance as well.
And I could add to that. I mean, they're not the same team. Billy Donovan's a very excellent coach as well. And you forgot my good friend Javon Carter, Bulldog, off the bench too as a defender, so he might be the only X factor that actually could help DeMar with the addition of Kobe White and everybody else. But once again, you're absolutely right. That roster is not enough to go against our Celtics. It's just not enough. They're not deep enough.
No, Javon Carter, hey, former Buck. I mean, he's had some amazing stretches. He's a veteran presence. I'm sure he can stabilize this team, but they need some luck. They need a lot to go their way. They need Rajon Rondo on a nationally televised game again. Throw that back to a few years ago when they would just handle the Celtics for some reason in those games. But it is what it is. Like we said, I think we agree. This is one of those teams that I don't even think is going to make it. But I think if they do, the Celtics would handle them with ease. But the final team we got to talk about, of course, is Atlanta. You guys saw this from the start. They were the final team. Now, this is a little interesting because Atlanta is one of the few teams that didn't go sub 500 versus Boston this year. They had 2 wins, both in the late stages of March. 2 very close wins. One, of course, going into overtime where they could just eke out these wins against the Celtics. But the other 2 games, the Celtics handled them with, I want to say, relative ease. Again, 41%, 42% from the field. Didn't shoot very well from 3. I think the Celtics actually match up way better with the Hawks than a lot of fans are saying. I think this is the one matchup, like, I haven't seen a ton of people saying Atlanta is going to make it there and they're going to beat the Celtics, like, because we still don't know. There's a lot of ifs and ands and all this stuff going on. But I just think this is one of those things. If this series were to happen, people would say, oh, look, it's one of the teams that went 500. And I think this is a series where the Celtics just come out, utterly obliterate them. I don't think Trae Young gets anywhere against Jrue Holiday and Derrick White. And I just don't see anyone else on that roster making a difference, especially not DeJounte Murray.
I agree with you 100% as well on that, Josh. Like you mentioned, the 2 games that they recently played versus them, the first game, no Derrick White. So no great real perimeter defender to help you out on the defensive side. Second time in the matchup against them, DeAndre Hunter was just getting wide open threes and was just letting them fly. Brown was letting him take them open. Tatum was letting him take them wide open. It was just a utter disgrace for the Celtics. Played lackadaisical defense towards the end of the season because they already had the first seed locked up. If the Hawks were to beat the Bulls, which I do think they will, I think it could be a good, rematch of the first round last year. But like you mentioned, maybe 1 game, but that's the most I think they can take.
And I agree with you, Bruce. I completely agree with you. Atlanta is not the Atlanta that we saw a few years ago when Trae Young literally had him against New York. This team has been streaky. I will admit to that. Javonte Murray's playing well with the addition of him, but I don't think they have the bench either. The Celtics right now, they have the bench clicking so well the last couple games. Atlanta's not there. This is the first time Quinn Snyder's going to the playoffs with them. So there's a lot of first and new things going on with this Atlanta team. I just don't see it. I don't see them. To be honest, I see a sweep.
Mm-hmm.
I see a
Yeah, and again, I think the Celtics just match up incredibly well, where a lot of Atlanta's, most of their offense, the vast majority, comes from the 2 guard positions. And the Celtics, who are their best defenders, those 2 guard positions, not to mention an incredible rim protector in Kristaps Porzingis, or even like you got Al Horford in there as well, who are going to be able to stop DeJounte's slashing ability. Yes, they have Hunter. Yeah, they got some players all over. They got Bogey. They got whatever. It's not going to matter at the end of the day. The Celtics match up very well against them. And I think if that series happens, people might be surprised at how strong the Celtics look. But hey, guys, that's just our opinions. Let us know down below. I think we presented some good facts and some good reasons why the Celtics should handle every one of these teams. Which team are you scared of? Which team are you really, really excited for the Celtics to face? We would love to hear from you. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Celtics Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate all the support heading into the playoffs. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. For my co-hosts, Bruce and Isaac. We'll catch you in the next one.